Chapter 21 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What the original owner didn't realize was that his return would shatter the fragile peace within the Ho mansion. The capital buzzed with gossip about the real and fake young masters. Everyone wondered how the Ho mansion would handle Lin Xuanhuan, the previously favored fake, who was supposedly illiterate and raised on a farm. And what about the real heir, considered a country bumpkin? He was walking into a minefield, completely unaware. Luckily, the Ho mansion quickly clarified their stance: they wanted both boys. They reinstated the original owner's identity as the Ho mansion's heir, renaming him Lin Zimo. Simultaneously, they adopted Lin Xuanhuan into the Lin family, ensuring his status and treatment remained unchanged. They explained that Lin Xuanhuan was like a son to them, and the original owner was, after all, their blood. The Marquis and his wife declared they couldn't bear to lose either, a decision the original owner didn't object to. Initially, life in the Ho mansion was good. He had fine clothes, servants, and plenty to eat, a lifestyle he'd never dreamed of, but it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. It started with a banquet. Someone specifically invited him. He hesitated, but Lin Xuanhuan suggested he should go and meet other young gentlemen. Persuaded, he agreed. Having toiled in the fields his whole life, his skin was tanned, and his hands were calloused. Even in fancy clothes, he felt out of place among the pampered nobles. At the banquet, the young men gathered, chatting about poetry, literature, and their experiences, things he couldn't grasp. When someone deliberately quizzed him, his inability to answer became the joke of the evening. Lin Xuanhuan stepped in to defuse the situation. The original owner watched him, calm and collected amongst the crowd, and felt immense gratitude. After that, the snide remarks and open mockery became unbearable. He realized he didn't fit in and simply stopped going out. He retreated to the small courtyard arranged for him, and the whole mansion seemed to forget he existed. He ate, drank, and lived comfortably, undisturbed. This peace was shattered when Lin Xuanhuan disappeared. He'd been ambushed on a business trip to Jicheng, separated from his guards, and vanished. The Marquis and his wife were frantic. The entire Ho mansion was on edge, and even the oblivious original owner sensed the tension. Months later, Lin Xuanhuan returned unharmed, easing the anxiety that gripped the household. In the main hall, Mrs. Ho embraced Lin Xuanhuan, weeping with relief, showering him with questions about his ordeal. The Marquis and his heir also looked at him with concern. The original owner stood awkwardly to the side, feeling like an outsider. He retreated to his quiet courtyard once more. Meanwhile, political winds shifted. The sixth prince emerged victorious, becoming the crown prince. Shortly after, the emperor died, and the prince ascended the throne. The original owner knew the Ho mansion had backed the sixth prince. Now that their gamble had paid off, their influence would grow. Things were looking up, until he caught a chill. He woke up one morning feeling heavy and weak, and asked a servant to call a doctor. The diagnosis: a severe cold. Knowing a bad cold could be fatal, he took the doctor's medicine, but his condition worsened. He couldn't understand it. He'd always been strong. A simple cold shouldn't make him this weak. Confined to his bed in a haze, he received visits from his father, mother, brother, and Lin Xuanhuan. Fearing he might infect them, he kept them outside, only exchanging a few words. Then he noticed the servant who brought his medicine acting strangely, furtively adding something to the bowl. Horror washed over him. After the servant left the medicine, he pretended to be irritable and sent him away. He forced himself out of bed, evaded the other servants, and hurried to tell his mother. But as he approached her room, he overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. "My lord, are we really going to let Xuanhuan do this? He is our flesh and blood, after all." Thought it was Mrs. Ho. He froze, hand raised to knock. "My dear, don't be so sentimental. Xuanhuan is the emperor's most trusted advisor, and the Ho mansion needs him. He turned away from us after Zimo came back. The last thing he wants is Zimo around. Repairing our relationship with Xuanhuan means getting rid of him." The original owner stood paralyzed, listening to the Marquis's seemingly reluctant words. "It's all my fault for letting that poisonous woman switch them at birth," Mrs. Ho lamented. "She not only switched him, but also raised him to be timid, illiterate, and unbearable. The Marquis sighed. It's not your fault. The mistake was bringing him back at all. That boy from the Shangshu mansion made it publicly known that Yuer wasn't our biological son. It was fate. Send him to the estate outside the city in a few days, stop the medicine, and maybe he'll live. That should satisfy Xianer. All right, I'll make the arrangements, Mrs. Ho replied. They continued talking, but the original owner couldn't hear any more. He stumbled back to his room, his face pale, his heart in turmoil. He waited. 3 days later, Mrs. Ho suggested he recuperate at the family estate. He accepted without protest. On the way, he escaped. He dragged himself to a doctor, paying with money he'd taken from the Ho mansion. The Marquis's mansion made no effort to find him. Months later, his health restored, he returned alone to Lijia village. When the defender of the nation died and the enemy invaded Daxia, he joined the army and died on the battlefield. After absorbing his memories, Shiqing asked the system, what is his wish? The original owner's wish is to protect the defender of the nation and the land of Daxia. The Marquis's mansion is unwelcoming, and he does not wish to return. I understand. Shiqing hadn't expected his wish to be so selfless. He smiled. The original owner was a man of integrity. Looking at the humble house with a white mourning banner, he knew the defender of the nation wasn't in danger yet. But the Marquis's mansion, they'd be coming for him in a few months. Chapter 22 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shiqing's timing couldn't have been better. Wang Luxia was dead, and the engagement with the Li family was off. He was finally free. The original owner had mixed feelings about being deliberately swapped out by Wang Luxia. His mother had been good to him, especially compared to others in the village. Except for trying to stop him from going to school, she usually gave him what he wanted. They had depended on each other for so long, and he believed she genuinely cared for him, but eventually, he realized those feelings were nothing compared to her own son. He wasn't stupid, just naive and sheltered. Once he learned he'd been deliberately replaced, it all made sense. She didn't want him to go to school because she feared he'd go to the capital and expose his true identity, revealing the truth about her biological son. Unfortunately for her, the secret she worked so hard to keep was eventually exposed anyway. She worried too much. Even if the truth came out, so what? Their history together meant something. She even had some real feelings for the original owner herself, didn't she? Besides, her son was smart and had befriended the sixth prince. The Marquisate wouldn't give him up. Under her guidance, the original owner became a simple farmer. When his real parents investigated and saw how unimpressive their biological son was, they might have just written it off as a mistake if the situation hadn't been what it was. He was conflicted about Wang Luxia. He was grateful for her raising him, but resented her deceit. Shiqing arriving now meant he wouldn't have to face her. Host, why didn't the original owner want us to retaliate against the Marquisate? That family almost killed him. The system was confused, struggling to understand human emotions. Even though the Marquis and his wife abandoned him for their own gain, and only took him back out of obligation, the original owner did have some good times in the Marquis mansion. Besides, they are his blood relatives. The fact that he left without a word says it all. Oh. The system seemed to get it. The original owner's wish was to protect the Duke of the Guardian. He didn't ask for revenge on the Marquis mansion, just that he didn't want to go back. Still, he must have felt some resentment. When he first arrived, he thought the Marquis and his wife treated him well. But he gradually noticed their kindness felt distant, like he was a guest, not family, and they treated him differently from brother Lin and Lin Yuxuan. Later, Lin Yuxuan drugged him, and they pretended not to notice. He knew then that they had chosen to prioritize Lin Yuxuan and their own interests. He was devastated and lost, but after joining the army and experiencing the horrors of war, his resentment faded. Host, do you have a plan to complete the mission? Yep. Shiqing said, heading to the kitchen. The original owner probably hadn't eaten in a while and his stomach was empty. He opened the rice jar to find it empty. He sighed and pulled out a fasting pill. Meanwhile, back at the Li family's house, Li Dezhuang returned home and Li Xiangxiang greeted him. Dad, is my engagement to Wang Daniu off? Li Dazhuang looked at his hopeful daughter, sighed, and said, "It's off." He and Wang Dania hadn't lied. His daughter, had been acting strangely since waking up after nearly drowning. He wondered if something was wrong with her head. Sigh, he thought again. Great. Thanks, Dad. Li Xiangxiang didn't realize her father's concern. Hearing the engagement was cancelled, she breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want to be forced into marriage like women in this era, marrying someone she didn't even know. She had begged her parents for days before her father finally agreed. Now, he had finally given in. Happy, Li Xiangxiang went to feed the pigs, also thinking about starting a small business to make some money. This family was so poor that basic necessities were a problem. Other time travelers were princesses or daughters of wealthy officials. She was just a village girl, and one without a golden finger to help her out. Life wasn't fair. At least she didn't have any awful relatives to deal with, she thought while feeding the pigs. Back at Wang's place, Xuanhuan relaxed in a rocking chair he'd brought from his space, enjoying a peaceful afternoon in the countryside. Since Wang's family came to Lijia village later in life, with no relatives or friends, no one bothered him. The next morning, Xuanhuan went hunting in the mountains and caught a few pheasants and rabbits. He didn't return until dark. In Wang's courtyard, the system was searching for recipes for its host, how about this? Big plate chicken. Or this, braised chicken, spicy chicken, kung pao chicken, beggar's chicken. Xuanhuan looked at the endless recipes the system had found. He didn't even have the right spices. Finally, he decided on roast chicken, simple and easy. 10 minutes later, the system watched its host devour the roast chicken. It couldn't reconcile this with its memories of its host's refined and elegant persona from the original world. Though his actions weren't crude, there was an unexplainable elegance. The system couldn't help asking, "Host, don't you have a bigger pill?" Yep. Knowing what the system was getting at, Xuanhuan didn't explain everything. The bigu pill was colorless and tasteless. When he had the chance to enjoy real food, why not? Oh. The system didn't understand why he'd choose to eat when a bigu pill would suffice, so it wisely kept quiet. Eventually, it learned about foodies, and that being a foodie transcended class, cultivation, and even immortality. With food taken care of, Xuanhuan planned to start working toward fulfilling the original owner's wish. Meanwhile, in the capital's Guangping Marquis mansion. "Marquis, are you sure Xianer isn't our son?" The Marquis's wife looked at her husband, asking the question again with a sad expression. The Marquis frowned. His wife had asked this several times. Annoyed, he still tried to comfort her. "Madam, don't worry. I've sent people to investigate. We'll know the truth soon." "How can I not worry? It's all anyone's talking about. Xianer hasn't been able to eat or sleep because of it. What if it's true? What will he do?" That the Marquis's wife was truly concerned. Lin Yuxuan was her son, raised with her own hands. She was deeply attached to him. If he really wasn't her biological son, what would happen? The Marquis was upset too. The son he'd raised for over a decade might not even be his. What was going on? His home was now a mess. He could feel his colleagues' pitying glances these days. He was fed up. "Madam, we'll talk about it after we have the results. Let's not jump to conclusions." "All right, I'll listen to you." Seeing his impatient expression, the Marquis's wife retreated. The Guangping Marquis mansion was in chaos. Xuanhuan, on the other hand, rode his horse slowly towards the northwest. Chapter 23 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Staying the night, or just passing through, as dusk settled, a waiter spotted a man of simple attire but noble bearing leading a horse toward the inn. He hurried out to greet him. "I'll need a room upstairs for the night." "Sure thing. This way, sir." The waiter eagerly took the reins and led the horse to the stables out back. Xuanhuan entered the inn, ordered a hearty meal, and relaxed contentedly after eating and drinking his fill. He was worn out from his travels, he had plenty of supplies in his personal space, and even in a mortal body, he could cover 1,000 miles a day. Still, he chose to take his time on horseback. First, the Duke of the Protectorate was still safe, and the northwest was stable, so there was no real hurry. Second, it gave him a chance to take in the sights and enjoy the local color. He'd seen a lot of interesting people and things along the way. Though this world was different and not as convenient as the previous one, it had its own unique charm. While Shi slept soundly, Lin Yuxuan, back at the Marquis of Guangping's residence, was wide awake. The rumor that had been spreading like wildfire was now confirmed. He wasn't the Marquis's true son. Panic set in. He'd grown up in the lap of luxury, spoiled and protected by everyone. Now, he was told he was an imposter, a fake. His whole world seemed to be crumbling. Why? Why couldn't they just let it go? It was all Gu Mobai's fault. That troublemaker had always been at odds with him. In his efforts to bring him down, he'd stumbled upon the fact that he wasn't the real heir, but what did that have to do with him? Why stick his nose in other people's business and make it public? What was he hoping to gain? Lin Yuxuan tossed and turned, unable to sleep. He had to come up with a plan. His father had already sent people to find their biological son. What would happen when that person came back? He knew. He'd beg his mother. She'd always favored him over his elder brother. She wouldn't want to kick him out. Determined to stay in the Marquis's mansion at all costs, Lin Yuxuan finally drifted off to sleep in the early hours. The next morning, the Marquis's wife found her youngest son looking haggard and defeated. "Greetings, mother." Seeing his distress, the Marquis's wife felt a pang of sympathy. "Xianer, come here, let me look at you." "What's happened to you?" Lin Yuxuan stepped forward, letting her examine him, his face pale. "Maybe I've been overdoing it with my studies lately. I'm just tired." The Marquis's wife knew better, but played along. "Your health is what matters. You need to take care of yourself. Xiaolian, have a bowl of nourishing soup made for the young master later." The maidservant quickly responded, "Yes, madam." Seeing that his mother still cared for him, his eyes welled up. "Thank you, mother." They talked for a while. Noticing his unusual reserve, the Marquis's wife said, "Xianer, don't let the rumors get to you. You'll always be a son of the Marquis of Guangping." Lin Yuxuan finally got the reassurance he craved and visibly relaxed, his eyes reddening. "Yes, mother. I understand. If you'll excuse me." "Go on." The Marquis's wife watched Lin Yuxuan leave, sighing softly. It wasn't easy knowing the son she'd raised for so long wasn't her own. 16 years ago, she'd chosen an auspicious day to pray at the temple outside the city, but on the way back, a heavy rain turned the road to mud. She miscarried in the jostling carriage and ended up giving birth at a peasant woman's house. In the confusion, the peasant woman swapped her child for her own. Only the midwife who delivered the baby was aware, and the maid she'd brought with her knew nothing. Now, she didn't even know what her real child looked like. Logically, she should resent Xianer, the peasant woman's son. But seeing him so worn down after all these years, she couldn't help but feel sorry for him. How could she abandon him after raising him for so long? Meanwhile, the system constantly monitored the male and female protagonists, even in this world without the internet. Thanks to the system, Shi was well informed about the situation at the Marquis of Guangping's residence. In the original story, the people sent to retrieve the original owner should arrive at Lijia village within a few days. But this time, they'd return empty-handed. Shi took his time on his journey, and a month later, he finally arrived at Fengcheng in the northwest. The Protectorate mansion was located in Fengcheng. Shi settled in the city first and made inquiries about the Duke of the Protectorate. The Duke's name was Zhao Weiguo. He was stationed in the northwest year-round. The neighboring state of Chu had always had its eyes on the great Xia kingdom. It was thanks to Zhao Weiguo and his countless Zhao family soldiers that Fengcheng enjoyed any peace and stability at all. However, in the original plot, Duke Zhao Weiguo, loyal and devoted to the country, became a pawn in the power games of several princes in the capital. The emperor was aging but reluctant to name an heir. Several princes were vying for the throne, creating a turbulent undercurrent in the capital. Duke Zhao Weiguo's sister, Zhao Xiamen, had been summoned to the palace by the emperor more than a decade ago and made a concubine. Later, she gave birth to the 8th prince. As the 8th prince's maternal family, the protectorate mansion inevitably became involved in the struggle. To cut off the 8th prince's support, some princes plotted to kill Zhao Weiguo, taking with him his 2 promising sons and tens of thousands of Zhao family soldiers. The border's guardian died not at the hands of an enemy but at the hands of his own people, a truly tragic irony. With no commander, the northwest border was vulnerable, and Chu seized the opportunity to attack. The remaining troops couldn't resist, and Fengqing was overrun, burned, looted. The people of the northwest border suffered terribly. In the original plot, after the original owner returned to Lijia village, he heard about the border being overrun by Chu in his remote mountain village. He was conflicted. After giving it some thought, he joined the army. Once he experienced the brutality of the battlefield, he often lamented that things would have been different if the Duke of the Protectorate had still been there. Hearing it so often and witnessing the horrors of war, that thought gradually took root in his heart. When he died on the battlefield, those past events seemed insignificant. What he regretted most was failing to drive the enemy out of Daxia. That's why, when he learned he could trade 50% of his soul for a wish, he chose to protect the Duke of the Protectorate and Daxia without hesitation. Host, how are you going to protect the Duke of the Protectorate? Do you need a talisman? The system asked. Puzzled, Shirqing replied, why wouldn't I? But wasn't the original owner's wish to protect Daxia? Don't worry, I have a plan. Chapter 24 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fengqing, in the Protector's Mansion study. Dad, you hear about that hotshot who just rolled into Fengqing? Young Master Zhao blurted out as he barged into the study. Zhao Weiguo sighed inwardly, glancing at his impulsive younger son. Seeing his composed eldest son standing beside him offered some comfort. Heard whispers, yeah, he replied. Dad, you have. Awesome. Young Master Zhao was stoked, eager to share everything. Word is, this guy's from some secret lineage. Knows the stars and the dirt, can predict the future, knows everything that ever happened, and can work all sorts of medical and mystical magic. Seeing his father's expression darken, Prince Zhao Yunlan cut in quickly. Yunfei, you said yourself it's just a rumor. Could be total bunk. Come on, brother, where there's smoke, there's fire. If it was fake, it'd be blown up quick. I saw him cure a guy who was basically 6 feet under right there on the street. Zhao Weiguo, who'd been waiting to see where this was going, perked up. You saw this with your own eyes? Totally, Dad. And Mom's not been feeling great, right? Let's get him to take a look. Zhao Weiguo waited. Alright, he agreed, figuring it couldn't hurt to try. I'll leave it to you. Young Master Zhao, who had been gearing up for a hard sell, blinked, then grinned. You got it, Dad. Consider it done. News of this mysterious figure in Fengqing wasn't limited to the Protector's mansion. All the big families were buzzing. An expert had arrived, or so it was said, one of those reclusive family kids out on a walkabout. Some were skeptical. Meanwhile, in a quiet Fengqing courtyard, Shirqing was engrossed in military texts courtesy of the system. Yes, this was the miracle worker everyone was talking about. Footsteps approached. Shirqing closed the book, waiting. A gentle knock. Come in, Shirqing called. Zhao Yunfei pushed open the gate. A handsome young man in white sat in the courtyard, probably the same age as himself. A quick glimpse last time, up close, Zhao Yunfei was impressed. He really did give off that air of aloof mystery, a quality you just didn't see in regular folks. Young master, Zhao Yunfei said, stepping forward with a respectful bow. Zhao Yunfei at your service. Please, have a seat, Master Zhao. What brings you here? Zhao Yunfei settled on the stool. I hear you've got some incredible medical skills. Wondering if you might come to my place and check out my mother's health. Shirqing had been waiting for this. Yes, he replied. But I need a few days. Elated, Zhao Yunfei said, great. I'll send someone to fetch you in a few days, then. Understood. With the arrangement made, a happy Zhao Yunfei left. As soon as he was gone, the system chimed in with praise. Host, you're crushing it. You've already connected with the Protectorate Palace. The original owner's mission was to keep the Lord Protector from dying. Xuanhuan could have joined the army and worked his way up from the bottom, like the original owner. But that would be too slow. The Lord Protector was scheduled to die in the original story in just a year. Hearing about the Duke's wife's poor health after he arrived in Fengqing gave Xuanhuan an idea. He knew how much the Duke cared for his wife, and that he had been searching high and low for a doctor. He paid some people to spread the identity the system had cooked up for him, and then made sure to show off a little for the young Master Protector. And sure enough, here he was, things were going according to plan. Xuanhuan was pleased. Meanwhile, at the Guangping Marquis mansion, the Marquis grilled the guards he'd sent out to find his son. What's the status? He demanded. The leader reported, we found traces of the young master. Wang Lu took him to Lijia village in Pingyang City over a decade ago. By the time we found Lijia village, the Wang and Lu families had suffered several unfortunate accidents. The young master's nowhere to be found. The Marquis felt a mix of emotions. He heard that the boy had grown up illiterate in a small mountain village. He'd been worried that bringing him back would embarrass the family. Now that he was missing, he didn't know what to think. The boy was just unlucky, that's all. I see. You're dismissed. Lin Yuxuan was always on top of this. The report was quickly delivered. Sir, the country bumpkin's gone missing. Something must have happened to him, if you ask me. Lin Yuxuan was thrilled. The Marquis's family would likely have let him keep his place, but without that kid around it would be so much easier, no awkward comparisons. Good riddance. Trying to appear calm, he replied, understood. You can go. Lady Ho took the news of her son's disappearance calmly. Of all the kids, Lin Yuxuan was the one she cared the most about. The return of her biological son would affect him, so she was almost relieved that he was missing. Brother Lin didn't react much. Whether his brother came back or not, it wouldn't change things much for him. He was the heir, and the entire Guangping Marquisate would be his someday. With the real prince gone, the Lin family had other concerns. The real prince was discussed for a while, then gradually replaced by fresh gossip, and faded from memory. Xuanhuan examined the Duke of the Guard's wife. After taking her pulse and probing her body with his spiritual power, he had a solid idea of what was causing her weakness. Removing his hand, Xuanhuan stood. The Duke and his two sons stared at him expectantly. Zhao Yunfei rushed in. Master Shi, can you cure my mother? Madam's illness is treatable, Xuanhuan replied calmly. Really? Are you serious? That the others asked in unison. Xuanhuan remained calm. I'll write a prescription. You'll need to administer the medicine daily. Typical doctors couldn't cure the Duke's wife, whose lungs were failing. Thankfully, the Duke's family had the resources to keep her alive with expensive treatments. He just used his painstakingly cultivated spiritual power to give her a boost. The next step would be to slowly adjust her body. Looking at their hopeful faces, he knew how much the Duke's wife meant to them. Xuanhuan knew his plan was working. Chapter 25 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey, Xuanhuan, you home? Xuanhuan heard Zhao Yunfei hollering for him from outside first thing in the morning. Come on in, Xuanhuan said. He was used to Zhao Yunfei's casual, unannounced visits by now. Ever since Xuanhuan treated the Duke's wife, and her health had steadily improved, he'd become a local hero. Zhao Yunfei, now convinced of Xuanhuan's supposed expertise, was always dropping by. Xuanhuan played along, and they'd become pretty good buddies. Sure enough, Zhao Yunfei barged in and plopped down across from him without so much as a by your leave. After settling in, Zhao Yunfei gave Xuanhuan a look, a mix of envy and admiration. Man, some guys have all the luck, he said, then, turning on the charm, hey, Xuanhuan, how about running through those 36 strategies again? Xuanhuan calmly poured himself a cup of tea. Where'd we leave off yesterday? He asked, playing it cool. We were talking about creating something from nothing. Zhao Yunfei was practically bouncing in his seat. He was finding these strategies surprisingly useful. Maybe every underdog dreams of proving himself. Zhao Yunfei's dream. Master the art of war under Shi Qing and become a general, like, yesterday, then he'd show up his dad, make him proud for once. No more being called simple-minded. Just wait and see. Alright, then today we'll talk about pretending to advance one way while taking another. Shi Qing and Zhao Yunfei hashed out another plan, and Zhao Yunfei practically floated home afterwards. After 3 days apart, a man should be looked at with new eyes, he thought. He wasn't the bonehead his father thought he was. He was sharp. He wanted to buckle down and blow everyone away, but Zhao Yunfei couldn't help himself. Back home, he immediately started showing off to his father and older brother. If he had a tail, it would have been wagging so hard it'd knock over the furniture. The Duke and the Crown Prince exchanged amused glances at his antics, but they both made mental notes of the military tactics he was rattling off, so it went. Every time Zhao Yunfei visited, Shi Qing taught him something new, and the kid was actually learning. He was still a bit impetuous, but he was thinking things through more than before. The bonehead label was starting to fade. Ever since Shi Qing cured the Duke's wife, he'd been getting visitors, but only Zhao Yunfei from the Duke's household. That is, until about a month later, when Duke Zhao Weiguo himself showed up with his eldest son, Zhao Yunlan. Master Shi, I apologize if my son has been a bother. Not at all, Duke. Your son and I are friends. No need to apologize. Zhao Yunfei puffed up with pride. See, Dad. I told you brother Shi and I were tight. That the Duke, unimpressed with his son's boasting, just waved him away. Why don't you go outside for a bit? Dad, is this something I can't hear? Zhao Yunfei had a pretty good idea what his father was up to. He tried to stick around, but his father's serious expression told him he'd better make himself scarce. Zhao Weiguo turned his full attention to the younger man in front of him, someone close in age to his youngest son but clearly intelligent beyond his years. Master Shi, I'd like to ask, where exactly did my son learn these strategies he's been spouting lately? And forgive me for asking, but are you perhaps a descendant of some hidden military family? The originator of these strategies is no longer living. And whether I'm from some hidden family or not is irrelevant, isn't it, Duke? You've already had me investigated, haven't you? Is that why you're here today? Shi Qing wasn't intimidated in the slightest. Zhao Weiguo was momentarily taken aback. Shi Qing had always been gracious to their family, but his mysterious background had made them suspicious. He'd allowed his son to associate with him partly as a test. After watching and waiting, he'd concluded that Shi Qing was more likely a friend than a foe, a resourceful man who could be an asset to their country. Not at all. I'm just curious about your reasons for coming to Fengqing, Master Shi. Would you care to share them? I'm here to gain experience, Shi Qing said plainly, and it wasn't a lie. The goal of this quick travel mission was to gain experience. Seeing Shi Qing's openness, Zhao Weiguo decided to get down to business. Well, since you're here for experience, Master Shi, I'll be frank. Our army is in dire need of a military advisor. The Chu state has been threatening to invade Daxia for years now. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to join the army and lend us your expertise. That the military skills his son had picked up from Shi Qing were clearly effective. Now that he was convinced the man wasn't a spy, Zhao Weiguo felt he should be put to good use on the battlefield. Host, this is it. The main event is about to begin. The system practically vibrated with excitement. As a citizen of Daxia, it's my duty to serve. I'm happy to put my experience to use in service of Daxia. Excellent. Master Shi, you're a true patriot. Zhao Weiguo turned to his eldest son, who'd been silent throughout the conversation. This is my son Yunlan, currently serving as General Huwei in the army. Yunlan, I expect you to learn from Master Shi. Yes, father. Shi Qing gave Zhao Yunlan a slight nod. Prince Zhao. Master Shi, Zhao Yunlan responded with a bow, and just like that, 5 months after arriving in Fengqing, Shurqin had gained the Duke's trust and landed a job as a military advisor. Being a military advisor was Shurqin's goal all along. The original owner wanted to protect Zhao Weiguo, believing he could defend Daxia from its enemies. Shurqin could protect Zhao Weiguo too, but could Zhao Weiguo protect Daxia indefinitely? That remained to be seen. Ultimately, he'd have to rely on himself to complete his mission. Now, all those military books he'd been cramming would finally come in handy. Things were progressing smoothly for Shurqin. Fengqing was peaceful, but back in the capital, things were heating up. The emperor was getting old, and his sons were engaged in a no-holds-barred power struggle, which the emperor seemed to be encouraging. Various factions were vying for control of the court, creating an atmosphere of instability. Among the emperor's sons, the three most likely to succeed him were the first prince, the sixth prince, and the eighth prince. The first prince was the eldest and a legitimate son, which should have made him the obvious choice. However, the empress wasn't favored by the emperor, and the first prince's maternal family had lost its influence. Only a few old guard ministers still supported him. The sixth prince was born to consort Xu, a favorite of the emperor. Consequently, the sixth prince was also highly regarded. His maternal family was the prime minister's mansion. The prime minister had once been the emperor's tutor, a renowned scholar with many disciples. With the backing of the prime minister's mansion, the sixth prince was a strong contender for the throne. The eighth prince's maternal family was the Huguogong mansion, which controlled the military forces in the northwest. Although he wasn't a presence in the court, his power and influence couldn't be ignored. He had the support of many military generals. These three princes had the resources, skills, and allies to fight for the throne, and the others didn't stand a chance. With the princes vying for power, choosing a side was unavoidable. The Marquis of Guanping's mansion had thrown its support behind the sixth prince. The Lin family's decision was also influenced by another factor. Lin Yuxuan was a close companion of the sixth prince, and the two were good friends. Regardless of their assessment of the sixth prince's chances, the connection between Lin Yuxuan and the sixth prince meant the Marquis mansion had no choice but to back him. Chapter 26: The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The capital was a mess, but Fengqing was as calm as ever. The northwest was under the watchful eye of Duke Zhao Weiguo. For years, there had only been a few minor skirmishes with the Chu kingdom, no real wars. Even after Shurqin became a military advisor, he hadn't seen any major battles. The Duke of the State Guard's mansion had been in Fengqing for generations, ever since Zhao Weiguo's grandfather set up shop there. The men of the Zhao family were all tough as nails, the first line of defense against any Chu kingdom invasion. After repeated failures, the Chu kingdom had finally given up, choosing to bide their time. This lull in the northwest gave those back in the capital the idea that the Duke's mansion was expendable, and they started taking potshots at the Zhao family without a second thought. All they cared about was their own short-term gain, blind to the fact that without the Duke and his troops, the Chu kingdom would have a clear shot at Daxia. The remaining soldiers would be steamrolled by the aggressive Chu forces, defenseless against their attacks. As the Northwest Army's strategist, Shurqin wasn't about to let the commander-in-chief walk into a trap. He laid out the situation in the capital for Zhao Weiguo and his son. They weren't too proud to listen. Plus, after working together for a while, Shurqin's reputation for being cunning and insightful had stuck. Zhao Weiguo immediately ordered the defenses of the Duke's mansion and the Northwest Army to be beefed up. Shurqin breathed a sigh of relief when he saw they were taking him seriously. He then pressed a talisman into the hands of each of the three men. These are special talismans my family makes. They'll block one fatal blow. Just keep them on you, just in case. The system, watching from inside Shurqin's head, couldn't help but chuckle. It was a familiar move. What else could he do? Giving out talismans was the easiest way. These guys were mission targets. The battlefield was a dangerous place, and the capital was even worse. Shurqin couldn't babysit them. Besides, he had plenty of these charms lying around, so might as well hand them out. Zhao Weiguo examined the small amulet. Thanks, military advisor. Zhao Yunlan was just as grateful, thanking Shurqin. But Zhao Yunfei seemed distracted. He looked around, poking the talisman paper, curious. Hey sure, do you really know the secrets of Chimen Duanjia? A little. Can you teach me? I could be your apprentice. Zhao Yunfei was practically bouncing with excitement. Shi Qing looked at Zhao Yunfei's hopeful face and shut him down. It's a family secret. Can't pass it on. Sorry, Yunfei. He knew all sorts of magic arrays from his own world, and had only glimpsed at what passed for Chiman Duanjia here. Luckily, the system had given him the perfect backstory, a descendant of a reclusive family. That gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card for anything he didn't want to explain. Zhao Yunfei looked a little embarrassed. Hey, no worries, sure. I didn't mean to pry. It's nothing. Half a year flew by, and just like in the original storyline, a bunch of princes teamed up to take down the Duke's mansion. Shi Qing watched as a general close to the Duke secretly contacted people in the capital. He didn't blow the whistle right away. A few days later, just as Shi Qing suspected, after getting a reply from the capital, the general made contact with the Chu kingdom, plotting to kill the Duke together. In the original story, the Duke had died in battle. But ever since Shi Qing arrived in Fengcheng, there hadn't been any major wars. During his time as an advisor, Daxia and Chu had only had a few scuffles. That made him suspect something else was going on. Now, it looked like they were teaming up with the enemy. It was a classic case of biting off more than they could chew, except the people who'd suffer would be the residents of Fengcheng and the surrounding area. What a shame. With the scheming in the capital reaching a fever pitch, Shi Qing told Zhao Yunlan about the traitor. Zhao Yunlan was different from Zhao Yunfei. As the eldest son, he was calm and dependable. He was the perfect guy to handle this. Sure enough, a few days later, Zhao Yunlan caught the traitor red-handed. Thanks for the heads-up, military advisor. Don't mention it, Prince. Shi Qing looked at the restrained traitor, raising an eyebrow. In the original story, this guy took over the Northwest Army after the Duke's family was wiped out, living the high life. Now he was finally getting what he deserved. Judging by the Northwest Army's reaction to the traitor, things wouldn't end well for him. With the traitor out of the picture, the Northwest Army had one less thing to worry about. As for the 8th prince, as long as he had the guts, the Duke's mansion could give him a real shot at winning. Time ticked by, and Shi Qing became more and more respected in the Northwest Army, enjoying his life. Meanwhile, back at the Guangping Marquis' mansion, things were grim. Lin Yuxuan had gone to Jicheng to work for the 6th prince, but had been ambushed and disappeared. Coincidentally, Jicheng was the same city where their biological son had vanished. The Marquis and his wife were in shock. First their real son disappeared there, and now their adopted son vanished in the same place. The Marquis' wife couldn't help but wonder if that place was cursed for their family. All they could do was pray for their son's safe return. To have him disappear while working for the 6th prince was just adding insult to injury. They hadn't just failed, they'd disappeared without a trace. Bad luck all around. What they didn't know was that Lin Yuxuan had been rescued by someone. And the only one who would go out of their way to save a stranger of unknown origin was none other than the heroine from another world, Li Xiangxiang. Li Xiangxiang had changed her name and completely cut ties with her old life as Li Area. Using her modern knowledge, she and her family had started a business and moved to town. One day, she had a strange feeling, like something was pulling her. She walked down a deserted alley and found a man lying in the corner, barely alive. He was dressed in fancy clothes, with a sharp jawline, piercing eyes, and a face that put modern-day celebrities to shame. She had some men carry him back to her house. Lin Yuxuan was taken in by Li Xiangxiang, escaping his pursuers but also missing the people who were looking for him. The Li family was doing better thanks to Li Xiangxiang, so her word carried weight. When she brought home a stranger, Li Dezhuang and his wife only asked a few questions and didn't try to stop her. After Li Xiangxiang nursed Lin Yuxuan back to health, he slowly woke up. Still injured, Lin Yuxuan had no idea what was going on outside, so he stayed with the Li family to recover, figuring he'd decide what to do once he was back on his feet. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was destiny. But Lin Yuxuan and Li Xiangxiang fell for each other during their time together. Lin Yuxuan was drawn to Li Xiangxiang's outgoing personality, finding her refreshingly different from the sheltered women in Beijing. And Li Xiangxiang was smitten by Lin Yuxuan's gentle nature and intelligence, seeing him as the perfect gentleman. Their feelings grew, and their relationship blossomed. By the time Lin Yuxuan had recovered, they had already confessed their love for each other. Chapter 27 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yuxuan, will we ever see each other again? Xiang, I never break a promise. Don't worry, I'll be back for you soon. The system watched Lin Yuxuan and Li Xiang's melodramatic farewell with glee, like it was a matter of life and death. Shi Qing, on the other hand, was unimpressed. Seeing his reaction, the system couldn't resist asking, "Host, aren't you even a little excited?" It's alright. It reminds me of the soap operas Shi Yan used to binge-watch in the last world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lin Yuxuan and Li Xiang parted ways. He then located the person he was looking for, completed the task assigned by the sixth prince, and contacted people back in the capital. A few days later, the Marquis's mansion received news that their young master was safe and sound and on his way home. The Marquis and his wife were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. About 2 weeks later, Lin Yuxuan returned to the capital safe and sound. He reported to the sixth prince first, then headed back to the Marquis's mansion. It was late by the time he arrived. When the servants told him that the Marquis and his wife were waiting up for him, Lin Yuxuan went to greet them. He bowed and said, "Father, Mother, I'm back." Good. Glad to have you back," the Marquis said without much emotion. His mother, however, was a different story. Seeing that her youngest son was unharmed, she rushed over, pulled him close, and checked him over from head to toe before finally relaxing. "Thank goodness you're all right, my son." Lin Yuxuan felt a surge of warmth at her concern. "It was unfilial of me to cause you both such worry." "Nonsense, son. Next time you go out, make sure you have better guards." This time was too close for comfort. "All right, mother, I will." In the end, Lin Yuxuan's trip turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Not only did he find true love, but he also earned the sixth prince's trust. The sixth prince felt guilty because Lin Yuxuan had nearly died doing his bidding in Jicheng, so he treated him even better than before. From then on, Lin Yuxuan, thanks to the sixth prince's favor, silenced all those who had previously mocked him for his background. In the original storyline, this incident was the turning point where the sixth prince saw Lin Yuxuan's loyalty. When he eventually ascended the throne, Lin Yuxuan became one of the emperor's most trusted advisors. Meanwhile, Shi Qing continued to tutor the Zhao brothers daily. Due to the previous disastrous battles, the Chu kingdom had completely ceased its attacks, leading to a period of genuine, albeit short-lived, peace between the two countries. One day, Zhao Yunfei burst into Shi Qing's courtyard, bubbling with excitement. "Brother Shi, an imperial edict arrived from the capital. The emperor summoned my father back. We're going to the capital. Wanna come with us? You and the Duke of the Guard are going, leaving the prince here." "Yep. My eldest brother's staying behind to look after Mom and my sister. I'm going with Dad. It's been ages since I've been to the capital. I only went a few times when I was a kid, but I vaguely remember they have tons of amazing food." Zhao Yunfei even drooled a little as he spoke, as if he could already smell and taste those delicacies. He then turned to Shi Qing. "Oh yeah, Brother Shi, have you ever been to the capital?" "Never," Shi Qing replied. After his arrival, he went directly from Lijia village in Jicheng to Fengcheng. "Then you should come with us. It's not like the Chu kingdom's gonna attack anytime soon, so there's no real need for you to stay here." Hearing Zhao Yunfei's suggestion, Shi Qing realized he was also curious to see the capital. "Sounds good," he said. "I'd love to." Zhao Yunfei was thrilled. "Great. We're leaving in a few days. Just pack your bags and let the servants handle the rest." "Okay." A while back, at the invitation of the Duke of the Guard and his wife, Shi Qing had moved into their mansion. Where he lived didn't matter to him, but living at the Duke of the Guard's residence was undeniably more convenient. Shi Qing packed a few belongings, and soon the day arrived for their departure to the capital. The Duke of the Guard exchanged a few words with the prince, bid farewell to his wife, and then the group set off. The Duke of the Guard only brought a few hundred Zhao family soldiers with him, and everyone traveled on horseback. They rode almost non-stop, finally arriving in the capital a month later. The Duke of the Guard also owned a mansion in the capital, which was maintained by hired help, so they were able to move in immediately. Everyone went to take a bath and rest. The next day, the Duke of the Guard and his son went to the palace to pay their respects to the emperor. Shurqing didn't go with them. After the father and son entered the palace, he went out to explore the city. The capital was indeed bustling, with a wider variety of goods and services than Fengcheng. Shurqing found a well-known restaurant and treated himself to a delicious meal. Just like Zhao Yunfei had said, the food was amazing. As he left the restaurant, he ran into the wife of the Marquis of Guanping, who was the birth mother of this body. She was entering the restaurant with a noble lady, and they were deep in conversation, both wearing smiles. Shurqing simply walked past them without stopping. At this time, the sixth prince was trying to win over the Minister of Revenue. As supporters of the sixth prince, the Marquis of Guanping's mansion would do everything possible to help him secure that position. The Minister of Revenue had a notoriously arrogant and domineering daughter. They could find a way to make a breakthrough here. Since the Crown Prince Lin Huaijin was already engaged, the Marquis of Guanping intended to have Lin Yuxuan marry the minister's daughter. Although Lin Yuxuan was not the biological son of the Marquis's family, they treated him as their own. He was intelligent, well-known, and a close friend of the sixth prince. His future was bright, and few people cared about his background anymore. Shurqing figured that the noble lady beside the Marquis of Guanping's wife must be the Minister of Revenue's wife. Shurqing guessed that the Duke of the Guard and his son would be back soon, so he headed back. Sure enough, they returned not long after Shurqing arrived. The Duke of the Guard looked displeased, but Zhao Yunfei, ever carefree, was as cheerful and energetic as usual. Shurqing could guess what had happened. After the Duke of the Guard entered the palace, but since the Duke didn't bring it up, Shurqing pretended not to know. Over the next few days, Shurqing was dragged around the capital by Zhao Yunfei, visiting all the sites. The power struggles between the princes were confined to the upper echelons, leaving the common people unaffected. They went about their daily lives as usual. Shurqing and Zhao Yunfei spent their days eating, drinking, and having fun, almost forgetting everything else, until one day, the Duke of the Guard brought home a refined and imposing man. Shurqing knew his identity at a glance. The eighth prince. Sure enough, Zhao Yunfei asked, confused, cousin, what are you doing here? The eighth prince smiled. I came out with my uncle for some fresh air, and also to see how my cousin is doing these days. Oh, I see. I'm doing great, cousin, don't worry. Aside from leading troops into battle and eating, drinking, and having fun, Zhao Yunfei had no interest in anything else. After saying that, he prepared to take Shurqing boating on the lake. Since he'd already booked a boat in advance, he knew that his cousin's visit wasn't as simple as he made it out to be, but he wasn't interested in his schemes. His father was there to deal with that. Cousin, you've seen me now. My friend Shi and I are in a hurry to go boating on the lake. I'll hang out with you another time. With that, he tried to leave with Shurqing. Shurqing remained silent. Just as he was about to leave with Zhao Yunfei, he heard the eighth prince say, Mr. Shi, please wait. Chapter 28 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Does the eighth prince need anything? Shurqing and Zhao Yunfei stopped and turned toward him. Since they'd been hailed, ignoring him wasn't an option. Shurqing cut right to the chase, identifying himself. The eighth prince didn't answer directly. Mr. Shi, could I have a word with you? He asked. Of course. Zhao Yunfei was confused. Since when did his cousin know Shurqing? And what did he want to talk about? Before he could figure things out, Shurqing and the eighth prince were already heading off together. Dad, what's he want with brother Shi? Zhao Yunfei asked, turning to his father, who was standing beside him. Zhao Weiguo waved a dismissive hand at his clueless son. Obviously, something's up. Don't worry about it. Weren't you going boating? Go on, get going. He turned and walked away. Zhao Yunfei thought to himself, what's the point of going alone? Shurqing and the eighth prince walked to a nearby pavilion and sat down. A maid brought melons, fruit, and snacks. Shi Qing studied the eighth prince. He looked to be about 18 or 19, dressed in a gentle and refined water-blue brocade robe. As a member of the royal family, he carried an innate sense of authority. While Shi Qing was sizing him up, the eighth prince, Xuanhuan, was doing the same. Xuanhuan observed the young man opposite him. Fresh and handsome, wearing a simple white robe, yet exuding an air of distinction. Just his presence suggested someone with an extraordinary background. Mr. Shi, Xuanhuan began directly, I heard from your uncle that you're from some kind of hidden family. That's right, Shi Qing replied confidently, without hesitation or embarrassment. The whole hidden family thing was incredibly useful, making it easier for him to move around, so he needed to sell it. He wouldn't abuse the identity or bring shame to this mysterious Shi family, whether it existed or not. May I ask what made you decide to join the army? I'm here to get some experience and serve my country. What's wrong with that? That's certainly noble. How did you know someone was plotting against the Duke of Hugua's mansion? I have some knowledge of Chiman Duanjia. Even though his uncle had mentioned it, Xuanhuan was still taken aback to hear Shi Qing say it himself. His own father kept a Taoist priest around who claimed to talk to spirits and predict the future, but he considered it to be just a bunch of parlor tricks. But the man in front of him, with his calm and collected demeanor, made him believe he was telling the truth. Sir, could you help me understand the situation at court? Shi Qing glanced at the eighth prince, who was looking at him intently. Their eyes met, neither looking away. After a moment, Shi Qing spoke. Eighth prince, just do what you need to do. Nothing's set in stone. Man can overcome anything. Xuanhuan smiled at Shi Qing's straightforward answer and proceeded to ask many questions. Problems that had seemed confusing or impossible to solve were suddenly clear when viewed through Shi Qing's eyes. He couldn't help but be impressed. They talked for a long time, and the more they spoke, the more Xuanhuan realized just how insightful Shi Qing truly was. Shi Qing, in turn, saw that the eighth prince had a good heart. He was a humble and respectful man, eager to learn from others, and genuinely concerned about the people. In the original story, after the Duke of the State and the two princes were framed and killed in battle, the Duke's wife died soon after. The Duke's daughter, who was married, was unable to take care of herself, and the eighth prince's greatest support vanished. Soon after, Xuanhuan was defeated by the sixth prince. After the sixth prince took the throne, he was sent to guard the imperial mausoleum and lived a miserable life. Now, he had a chance to help him. If he succeeded, the Duke of the State's mansion, as his mother's family, wouldn't be suspected by the future emperor and wouldn't meet the same fate as in the original story. The two men eventually wrapped up their discussion, and Xuanhuan reluctantly took his leave close to midnight. From that day on, Xuanhuan would frequently seek out Shi Qing for advice. Shi Qing answered his questions one by one, and Xuanhuan began to implicitly regard him as a mentor, treating him with great respect. The battle among the princes continued to rage. With the Duke of Hugua mansion still standing and Shi Qing's guidance, the eighth Prince Xuanhuan climbed from one of many contenders to the top of the list. The emperor himself began to take notice, causing worry and unease among the first and sixth princes. The eighth prince was riding high, while Shi Qing continued to hang out with Zhao Yunfei, living a comfortable life. Meanwhile, Lin Yuxuan and Li Xiangxiang, who had a steady relationship in the original story, started to run into problems. Because of Shi Qing's actions, the Duke of Hugua mansion hadn't been framed, and the eighth prince was still a serious threat to the sixth prince, who decided to try and win over the Minister of Revenue. At Guangpingho's suggestion, Guangpingho's wife tried to befriend the Minister of Revenue's wife and arranged for Lin Yuxuan to marry the Minister of Revenue's daughter. In the hopes of bringing the Minister of Revenue into the sixth prince's camp, the two women started shopping, boating, and looking at flowers together, and their relationship grew closer. Taking advantage of the situation, the Marquis proposed a marriage between Lin Yuxuan and the Minister of Revenue's daughter. The Minister of Revenue's wife discussed it with her husband, and they agreed. The Marquis had successfully completed her mission, but as she thought everything was settled, Lin Yuxuan ran into a problem. Lin Yuxuan knew that his mother was setting up a marriage between him and the Minister of Revenue's daughter. Even though he was in love with someone else, he felt it was alright to make a sacrifice for the sixth prince to succeed to the throne. He was sure that Xiangxiang would forgive him. After the sixth prince ascended to the throne, he would ask for an imperial decree to grant the marriage and marry Xuanhuan as a second wife, so as not to let her down. But a few days after the engagement, Lin Yuxuan ran into a haggard and heartbroken Li Xiangxiang on the street. When she saw him, she rushed over and hugged him, asking if he didn't love her anymore and why he was getting engaged to someone else. Seeing this once lively, cute, and clever girl now so devastated, Lin Yuxuan hesitated for a moment and felt terribly guilty, but he quickly made up his mind. For the sake of the bigger picture and a bright future, he had to disappoint her. At least for now. Lin Yuxuan explained the situation to Li Xiangxiang, talking about the importance of what he was doing and how he didn't have a choice, but Li Xiangxiang didn't react the way he had hoped. Li Xiangxiang looked at the man who had once showered her with affection and promised never to let her down, saying that she was the only person in his heart, and she felt confused. She could understand why Lin Yuxuan felt like he didn't have a choice, but she couldn't convince herself to accept it. After Lin Yuxuan broke up with her, she hadn't heard from him for a long time. She went to Beijing alone in a hurry and tried everything she could to find out what was going on with him. What she eventually learned was that he was engaged to another woman. She didn't want to believe it, but hearing him admit it to her face, she had no choice. Li Xiangxiang's heart was filled with conflicting emotions, a mix of confusion and pain. Chapter 29 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yuxuan, you promised you'd marry me, Li Xiangxiang said, her eyes red as she looked at Lin Yuxuan, the man who still made her heart race. Xiangxiang, I haven't forgotten my promise. After I get my affairs in order, I'll definitely come back and marry you, right? He replied. Hearing his confident words, Li Xiangxiang was suddenly reminded of the sweet nothings he'd whispered when they were first in love. Same scene, different words. It was almost laughable. Now she wasn't his priority, but what about later? What if this happened again? What then? She wanted to turn and walk away, to cut all ties. But the thought of giving him up, of never seeing him again, tore at her heart. Lin Yuxuan, seeing her silent and sad, pleaded, Xiangxiang, can you trust me one more time? Okay, she said, lifting her chin and looking him straight in the eye. If she couldn't let go, she'd give him, and herself, another shot. Overjoyed, Lin Yuxuan reassured her, you have to believe me, Xiangxiang. No matter what happens with anyone else, you're the only one in my heart. Okay. Li Xiangxiang forced a smile. They had made up, but she knew things would never be the same. There would always be someone else between them. She wasn't some old-fashioned woman who'd put up with her husband having multiple partners. Lin Yuxuan had promised her forever, and now he was suddenly backtracking. Even if he claimed he had no choice, it still stung. Meanwhile, on Shurqing's end, the system observed the fractured relationship and sighed. Host, how did they end up like this? They were so in love in the original story. Isn't it obvious? Shurqing replied, in the original plot, the eldest prince had teamed up with several others to take down the Duke of the Protectorate, the sixth prince had reaped the benefits, and the eighth prince had quickly been eliminated. Lin Yuxuan had stuck with the sixth prince and enjoyed endless glory, never needing to marry for political gain. The issues with Li Xiangxiang had all stemmed from the Marquis. She felt Li Xiangxiang, a peasant girl, wasn't good enough for her son and acted like a stereotypical evil mother-in-law, constantly looking down on her. Lin Yuxuan had always defended Li Xiangxiang. Despite the Marquis's meddling, they'd grown even closer. Ultimately, the Marquis's opposition was meaningless to Lin Yuxuan. She doted on him and couldn't really hurt him. Plus, he was a rising official with the emperor's backing. He was untouchable. But now, the eighth prince was gaining ground, making the sixth prince look weak. So, naturally, he was getting desperate. To secure his position, and to win over the Minister of Revenue, someone had to be sacrificed. Lin Yuxuan, the sixth prince's right-hand man, was the obvious choice, so this issue landed squarely on his shoulders. He liked Li Xiangxiang, sure, but his ambition mattered more. So, naturally, she had to suffer. And Li Xiangxiang? She wasn't some docile woman who'd sit quietly and accept it. She was independent and clear-sighted. Lin Yuxuan had put her second, hurting her, and their relationship was bound to suffer. Of course, the system lacked human emotions, so it didn't fully grasp the situation. The original owner of this world hadn't needed to personally deal with the leads, so the system viewed their romance like a TV drama. As Shurqing watched their drama unfold, footsteps approached, and a servant announced, "Sir, the 8th prince is here. He requests your presence in the front yard." "Understood," Shurqing replied, walking toward the front. He found Xia Wenqing making tea. "Ah, you're here," Xia Wenqing said. "Try my latest blend." Shurqing took a sip. "Not bad. You're improving." Xia Wenqing chuckled. "I think so too." Shurqing watched Xia Wenqing carefully, guessing the reason for his visit. Sure enough, after a moment, Xia Wenqing said, "My uncle is returning to the northwest in a few days." "Yes." Shurqing understood but remained silent. Seeing Shurqing's lack of response, Xia Wenqing asked directly, "I was wondering if you'd consider staying. I have important matters in the northwest." "Please forgive me, Your Highness." Shurqing admired the 8th prince, believing he would rule wisely. He would like to help him, but his mission was to protect the Duke of the Protectorate. "I understand," Xia Wenqing said, slightly disappointed but accepting. People from hidden families never sought office. He was fortunate to have benefited from Shurqing's guidance. "Your Highness, as long as you stay true to yourself and live without regrets, you'll achieve your goals." Xia Wenqing looked at Shurqing, gaining clarity. He was also curious about what kind of family could produce someone like him. He was resourceful, intelligent, and strategic, seemingly possessing everything, yet he cared nothing for fame or fortune. After spending time with him, you got the feeling that he was extraordinary. They talked for a long time, but Shurqing refused to remain in the capital. He only promised to advise Xia Wenqing if he had questions. Zhao Weigua hadn't objected to his recommendation. He'd had his own selfish reasons for pushing Shurqing towards the 8th prince. The longer he knew Shurqing, the more he realized he was truly unfathomable, almost omniscient. He thought it was a waste for such a talent to be stuck in the army as an advisor, especially since the Northwest was relatively peaceful. If he could help the 8th prince, his chances of winning would improve, and the Protectorate Duke's mansion would be safer. Over the years, he'd sensed the Emperor's growing suspicion of the Zhao family. Loyalty aside, no ruler wanted to be constantly watched. If another prince took the throne, the Zhao family could face dire consequences. The 8th prince, however, wouldn't harm the Protectorate Duke's mansion because of his feelings for them, and he could hand over his military command with peace of mind. Since Shurqing refused to stay, Zhao Weigua accepted his decision. On the day of their departure, Xia Wenqing came to see them off with many gifts. Zhao Yunfei praised his cousin's thoughtfulness, calling him the best cousin ever, which made them laugh. After saying their goodbyes, they set off, retracing their steps back to Northwest Wind City. Chapter 30 The Abandoned Young Master of the Marquisate 11. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Protector's Mansion. Because they'd gotten a letter ahead of time, the Protector's wife and the Crown Prince were already waiting at the gate. Smiles lit up their faces as they watched the group ride up. "Mom! Mom, we're back!" Zhao Yunfei recognized his mother and brother from way off and shouted with excitement. It had been almost 6 months since he'd left Fengcheng. Sure, the capital had fancier food and more to see, but he still missed the town where he grew up. More than that, he'd missed his mom and brother terribly, not to mention his sister. Even though she was married, she usually visited often. This time, half a year had gone by without seeing them. Zhao Weigua rode up to the gate. Seeing his wife and son waiting, a wave of warmth washed over him. "My dear," he said. The Duke's wife looked at her husband and son, clearly worn out from travel. "Welcome home. Are you hungry? I've prepared a feast. Go wash up first, and then you can eat." "Sounds good," Zhao Weigua replied. "Great, Mom. I'm starving." "You're the best, Mom, always looking out for me." Zhao Yunfei chimed in. Shurqing couldn't help but chuckle at Zhao Yunfei's familiar words. Passing by Zhao Yunlan, he gave a nod. "Your Majesty." "Military advisor, thanks for your hard work," Zhao Yunlan said with a smile. You're too kind, young master. Everyone headed inside to freshen up, shedding their dusty travel clothes for something clean before heading to the banquet. The Duke's wife had the servants prepare a mountain of food. After everyone was stuffed, they retreated to their rooms for some much-needed rest. Back in his room, Xuanhuan sighed, the worst thing about this world is how slow it is to get around. If it's for fun, you can take your time, enjoy the scenery, stop for snacks, but if you have to rush, you're stuck eating dried rations every day. It's torture. The system, developing feelings after spending so much time with the host, felt bad for him. It said, "Host, the system store has tons of stuff, including food and drinks. Unfortunately, my current level doesn't let me open it. Sorry. It's okay. I'll just find a way to store some food in my space." Hearing the system's regretful tone, Xuanhuan quickly reassured it, that's right. Why hadn't he thought of stocking up on food in his space before? He had it filled with elixirs and magic weapons, but there was still plenty of room to store other things, like food. Okay, host. That's a good idea. Yeah, how many points do you need to level up? Yes, host. Got it. From now on, all my points are going to upgrading you. After returning to Fengcheng, Xuanhuan settled into a pretty dull routine. He visited the military camp daily, finding everything in perfect order. Xuanhuan had clearly done a great job in their absence. There wasn't much for Xuanhuan to do. He'd already laid out his plans and systematically trained the soldiers using modern military methods. Now, they were being implemented perfectly. With nothing to do, Xuanhuan occasionally received letters from the 8th prince. Some asked for his opinions, while others were just friendly updates. Xuguo remained quiet, refraining from attacking Daxia again. Xuanhuan suddenly remembered the words he'd often heard in the military camp in the original storyline. Back then, Daxia's morale had plummeted after the Protector's family and tens of thousands of Zhao soldiers were killed. The new general wasn't very capable, and his troop formations and strategies were no match for the Protector's. The northwest fell steadily under Xuguo's attacks. By the time the original owner arrived in the northwest, Fengcheng had already been captured, and the invaders were pushing deeper into Daxia. The constant fighting caused countless Daxia soldiers to die every day, leaving everyone numb. He didn't know who said it, but someone sighed, if only the Lord Protector were still here. The sentiment spread through the ranks. In the battle where the Protector died, many didn't know what had really happened, and those who suspected foul play were afraid to speak out. So many soldiers had died, and everyone just knew it was a tragedy. With a bleak road ahead, everyone longed for the Protector and the Zhao army. They would never have let Xuguo's soldiers invade Fengcheng, and so many people wouldn't have died for nothing. Xuanhuan felt that such sentiments were not nonsense. Zhao Weiguo was definitely a skilled and experienced general. As the eldest son, Zhao Yunlan was deeply influenced by his father and was a capable leader in his own right. Even Zhao Yunfei, who often seemed carefree, was a fierce warrior on the battlefield. Every man in the Protector's mansion was a brave and skilled fighter. If they hadn't been framed and betrayed, Daxia wouldn't have fallen into such a state in the original story. Now, Xuanhuan had helped the Protector's mansion escape the assassination. He'd once worried that Zhao Weiguo couldn't guarantee Daxia's safety against Xuguo. Now, it seemed that with the Protector's mansion around, Xuguo wouldn't cause any trouble. While the northwest remained peaceful, the battle between the princes in the capital was heating up. The emperor's health was steadily declining. Whoever was named crown prince now was likely to be the next ruler. The princes were doing everything they could to impress their father and stand out. The one who performed the best was undoubtedly the 8th prince, Xia Wenqing. The eldest prince was beside himself with rage when he saw how successful the 8th prince was. Having the support of the Duke of the State Guard, he already had plenty of military support. The 8th prince had also been doing a great job on various other matters lately. Several civil officials had also secretly joined his side. Even their father was now paying more attention to him, even though he was the eldest son. The eldest prince was unwilling to accept this and was secretly plotting how to bring the 8th prince down. He couldn't act rashly against the Duke of the State Guard. The person he'd planted last time had been discovered, costing him an important asset. Fortunately, he hadn't contacted them personally, or he might have been implicated. If he were to try again, not only would they be on guard, but he also wouldn't have anyone to do the job. The sixth prince was also growing anxious. Seeing his father's preferential treatment of the eighth prince, he was furious. He knew about what the eldest prince had done to the Duke of the State Guard a few days ago. He thought he could sit back and reap the rewards, but the eldest prince, that useless idiot, couldn't even pull that off. No wonder his father didn't like him, the eldest son.